when you talk to the people at Heaven Hill, they have close to, I've lost count, but it's close to 70 rick houses over 5 or 6 campuses. So they've got at the bottling plant one, they have Glencoe, they have Shenley, they have Deatsville, Cox Creek, and then Bernheim. So they have 6 places between Louisville and Bardstown that have different rick houses, different styles, different elevation, different exposure to the elements. And that's why they can pull off having one, they call it HH Reg. It's their one bourbon, rye bourbon, that makes multiple different whiskeys. So if you're a fan of Elijah Craig, Henry McKenna, JTS Brown, Heaven Hill, T.W. Samuels, J.W. Dant, all those are the same whiskey, but because of all of the ways that these rick houses age their whiskeys differently, you get different whiskeys, profoundly different tasting whiskeys.
Welcome to another trip down the Bourbon Road with your hosts, Jim and Mike. So grab a glass of your favorite bourbon and kick back.
We would like to thank Tommy and Gwen Mitchell from Logheads Home Center for supporting this episode of the Bourbon Road. Find out more about their fine rustic furniture at logheadshomecenter.com.
Hey, this is Big Chief from the Bourbon Road, and Jim's not with us today. He's having some technical difficulties with his internet. That's kind of a funny thing because it's part of his job on a normal basis. So I kind of find that it's a funny thing that he's having internet. But we both live out here in the country, and to get internet for us is awful difficult. But we do have a guest on. He's been on the show before. He is Steve Coomes, the American badass journalist from Louisville, Kentucky. Steve, how you doing, man?
Well, once I get done laughing, I'll answer that question. I'm doing well. I appreciate the props nonetheless, untruthful as they are. Journalist was correct.
So how you been, man?
Been doing well. This COVID crisis has been weird, but we're getting through. Everything's kind of working out so far. Business is picking up again, and when you write about whiskey, that stuff disappears for a little while because that's entertaining. So, but we're getting through. No sickness in our house. We're lucky.
So you're still writing through all this. You're still sampling whiskeys and stuff. But me and you have been chatting quite a bit, and you have some big news that you joined a team down in Bardstown. So what is that all about?
So I was asked by the Kentucky Bourbon Festival to produce all of its content for 2020, and why that's really exciting is the festival board has agreed to a complete overhaul of the show or the festival, I should say, because it was dated. It needed a real whiskey focus, bourbon focus, as a matter of fact, and it had a lot of fun events, but it lacked educational events where people could really go sit down and walk, go through an hour session of whatever the case was and feel more learned, more experienced, about American whiskey, and that's going to change drastically. The festival, I should say, is the 15th through the 18th of October. We pushed it back a month, and if all goes well and the COVID cases go down fast, we'll pull it off. So I'm excited about it. It's going to be a bourbon event like no other. That's for sure.
So before it had that, like last year when we went. And I'd been before, it kind of has that country fair feel where there's just craft booths everywhere. And some of the distillers showed up and some didn't, because at the same time, there was Bourbon and Beyond, Louder in Life, happening in Louisville. And that was distracting from that Bardstown Bourbon Festival. So is that going to change?
It is. Well, first and foremost, because sadly, Louder Than Life and, what are the two accompanying festivals with it? Hometown Rising and Bourbon and Beyond have all been canceled for a couple of months now because they did not believe that gathering 200,000 people together over a 3-week stretch was a good idea. And I think that's right. So it definitely was a little bit strained, or distilleries were a little bit strained in terms of, person power, employees to be able to staff both events, the Kentucky Bourbon Festival and Bourbon Beyond, because it was just a lot to do. The distillery teams are amazing, and they seem to be ubiquitous, and we take it for granted that they do all the things that they do for the average bourbon drinker. But they were strained at that point, and it also led them to say, all right, which investment are we going to make? Are we going to make it back in Louisville at those rock concerts and country concerts and so forth? Or are we going to pour our resources into the Bourbon Festival? And the Bourbon Festival said, I think we need to convince you otherwise, and here's how we're going to do it. And so they're excited. They're really excited about what's going to go on in terms of content and education and other things that I can't tell just yet. But they're excited, to say the least. So hopefully we'll get to woo them back to Bardstown, the bourbon capital of the world.
So you heard it here first. It's going to happen. It's going to be different. If you're listening to this podcast, you want to go ahead and make your plans now to go down to Bardstown, get your tickets, get whatever you need together, get your trip planned, come to Kentucky in October. It'll be a lot cooler, right?
Let's hope so. Historically, it is. Here's a couple of bits of information. Tickets go on sale August 15, so you'll be able to see them online at KentuckyBourbonFestival.com. There are also 3 new hotels opened up in Bardstown, so that all but tripled overnight stays there, or hotel rooms, I should say. And there's just remember those dates because they're valuable, and you can hop online and get your tickets now to events that are going to be socially distanced, so we won't have as large a crowd as we have had in the past, and events which I've done, like tasting events for 60 people or 70 people will be 35, so we can socially distance safely. And so that means fewer tickets will be available. So jump on them.
Well, hopefully the Bourbon Road will get an invite to come down there and do a live podcast down there and do a live show.
I know a guy. He can arrange that.
So, you know what? I forgot to tell the listeners, this is a bourbon show. And we were supposed to have Lisa Wicker, the president and master distiller from Widow Jane, on with us. She wasn't feeling well today, and so she couldn't be on with us. But what I'm drinking today is Widow Jane, the Vaults. It's aged 14 years. Just an awesome bourbon. I got about a third of the bottle left right now. So that's what I'm drinking, Steve. What are you drinking?
I am drinking, and you said bourbon, but I did grab, I've got 2 bottles. What I'm drinking right now is a Michter's 10-year straight rye that just came out. It's a press sample. In case you're not familiar with the bottle, Darcy Blows. And it is fantastic. I think some of those, I was telling the master distiller, Dan McKee, and Andrea Wilson, the master of maturation, that I thought some of the rye bottles, I've always loved them, but this one's been the best by far. It's so balanced, and it's everything, all that Michter's goodness that you expect. It's just a terrific bottle of whiskey. So
they definitely have some great whiskeys there at Michter's, and I'm just waiting for them to come out with a wheated bourbon.
Oh, I bet it'll happen at some point.
Well, Jim always gets on me because every place we go, if we go to a new distillery and they don't have a wheated bourbon, I'm like, where's the wheated bourbon at? Where
instead of where's the meat? Where's the wheat?
Yeah. So I gave Michter's a hard time. I was like, so they're out there showing us the silos and stuff, and I'm like, so where are you guys going to put that wheat silo at? And the guy was like, what are you talking about? I was like, yeah, you're gonna have a place to put the wheat silo. And so everywhere we've been, the only place that I know for a fact that's probably never going to have a wheat, and I could be wrong, I might be wrong about my history, is Wild Turkey. I can't see them having a wheat.
Well, the funny thing about that is, if you've talked to Jimmy Russell before, and he'll tell you, if you talk to him about rye, he said, we used to make it 1 day a year, 2 days if it was, if we had capacity. And he said, I would never have thought, and this is 3 years ago when I last interviewed him, he said, I would have never thought we would get up to 1 week a month.
Wow.
And, he said, my grandson, Bruce Russell, convinced me and some others here that, Granddad, if you don't see the bottles flying off the shelf right now, it'll happen. And it's happening on the back of the cocktail culture. And he said, I just trusted him, and he was right. So, you see, so we've got Wild Turkey 101 rye now. We got Wild Turkey 80 rye. We're gonna get to have Wild Turkey rare breed rye soon. We had Decades. Well, it wasn't Decades. It was Master's Keep, right? The rye that came out last year. So Wild Turkey is sold on it. So maybe, I say all that, Michael, to say maybe they'll try wheat at some point.
Man, there's a lot of people out there who say that'd be sacrilegious for them, but I hope so, because I love weeded bourbons. I'm not drinking on weeded bourbon on this half of the show, but on the second half I will be.
Tell me real quickly about the vaults. I've not had the whiskey, and why is it so special? Because you and Jim are crazy about it.
So it was 99 proof. She says it was the oldest bourbon they had gotten their hands on at the time.
That was sourced, right?
It was distilled in Indiana and Tennessee. So we do know
Dickel and MGP, probably.
Yeah.
Right.
But she just has this clever way about blending stuff and making it taste just perfect. And me and Jim loved this so much. Me and him were down in the parking lot of the Getz Museum down in Bardstown, Kentucky, and I have these bottles, and I said, Jim, I think I'm going to take that vaults home with me. And he's like, why? I kind of want that. And I was like, well, no, I'm going to take it.
I'll give you some sample bottles, Jim.
And he's like, well, what if I want it? And I was like, okay, well, I'm the bigger fella here, so I'll take it.
Not a bigger character, bigger size.
I did tell him, I said, you like spicier whiskey. You take the 10-year because it is a lot of spice in it. This has that more, maybe that Dickel sweetness to it, I think. So I like that. Especially being a weeded guy, is a little bit smoother for me. 99 proof. I think that 10-year was like 110 or something. So yeah, a beautiful whiskey. I love it. And once it's gone, I think it's gone, but Lisa's doing great things up at Widow Jane. They're just distilling their own stuff up there now. And I'm excited to get to taste what she puts out,
Yeah.
Great lady.
Yeah, absolutely. And under-heralded in this business. Too few people know about the work that she's done already, but she doesn't seem to mind.
No, she just keeps pushing forward, right? And she's a Bardstown girl. She lives down there in Bardstown. Hopefully, after all this COVID stuff maybe we all get down there. And the story I hear is that her house is loaded down with whiskey.
She said, on walls, on shelves, on floors, and we need to come tidy that up for you.
Yeah. So maybe we can have us maybe at the Bardstown Bourbon Festival, we get her, have a night on her front porch and just watch people drive by.
And for listeners who have been to Maker's Mark's restaurant, Star Hill Provisions.
Yeah.
That is run by her daughter, Rachel Miller, and her son-in-law, Newman Miller, who's the chef. Rachel's
the chef out there.
Yeah. So a lot of talent from the family there.
So the Bardstown Bourbon Festival is going to happen. There's nothing else really going on at the time. There might not be any sports or anything going on in Louisville. Nothing's really going on in Louisville. How do you think not only COVID, but the protest and now riots have affected downtown Louisville?
Oh my gosh, it's terrible. So I live here, for those who may not know, and I have not been around when the protests were. I was not around. Luckily, I was on vacation when the protests actually went down my street. Which why they went down our street, I'm not certain, because this is not fancy pants place to go protest. But all the businesses, so many businesses are boarded up in the downtown area where these sometimes violent protests have happened. So nobody wants to go down there, or those businesses have closed, or they were closed by COVID and thought, I'm not going to open my place back up until both things become manageable. And yesterday, as a matter of fact, we had was the NFAC Black Militia was here and marched about 8 blocks and had a little rally that if you've ever seen a KKK rally, imagine the opposite. There was no crosses being burned, but there was a whole lot of hatred going on. Nothing peaceful. And that's, we can't keep that quiet. It's making national headlines.
Yeah. They actually, they had an accidental shooting there too. At part of their,
one of the militia. So yeah. I'm like, well, I'm not even a gun owner, but I know where the safety is if you hand one to me. So, I shouldn't make light of that. I don't want anybody getting hurt on any side, but the city is a little ill at ease over what's going down. But it's just a place that we can go any corner of the city and it's pretty safe. It has its rough areas like any city, but downtown's always been kind of sacrosanct. There was never much trouble down there, and now it's a weekend thing. So relative to the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, that may drive people down there, itching for a place to go. If hopefully things won't continue through October, but you don't know. I don't know the mindset of the protesters on that. So
yeah, I just kind of wonder how that's going to affect like Old Forester's birthday bourbon release. How it's going to affect Angel's Envy's. How's it affect the Urban Bourbon Trail, and how much money are they losing per day being downtown? My
sister-in-law, I don't think I'm talking out of school. She is director of tourism, I believe, at Angel's Envy is her title. And we're close and we talked quite a bit. And she talked about why they decided to close down with COVID. And I was not aware at the time that their spirit shop right there at the distillery is their busiest bottle shop over any account they have, off-premise account, anywhere in the country. Any liquor store that sells Angel's Envy is not selling nearly what they do at their spirit shop. That's profound.
Yeah.
So they decided that the best way to do business was to close it and move all those people into the production side to keep the stills going and to keep the bottles being filled. And then a couple of weeks ago, they get restrictions lifted by the governor and they're allowed to bring people back in. And boom, man, it picked right back up. Bottle sales were great. Tours were great, limited, of course. And now I haven't talked to her since this weekend's marches and whatnot, but I wonder what they're thinking come Monday. What are they going to do? Because it's pretty close to where all the action is. So
yeah.
I would in Old Forester is even that much closer, as is, Peerless is on the opposite end. Evan Williams is almost dead center. All these places surely are concerned. Michter's, yeah, at 8th Street. So they're closer than Peerless.
Yeah. I know it's taking effect on them and stuff. And I hate it for all those distilleries downtown. The only place that we haven't had a interview at is at Evan Williams. We've been to Angel's Envy, and Wes just is an awesome guy. And then Old Forester had us in, and we sat down with Jackie, and then Peerless was like one of my first interviews, and I sat down with Caleb and got to spend some time with Corky.
He's a character, isn't he? I love him. He's funny.
And I just hate it. I hate it for all those businesses downtown that they're going through this. Not only the COVID, but it's not just the businesses, it's the people that work there, and they're losing their jobs. People want to go back to work. They want to be at work. It's tough to be at home for a long time. I can't even imagine. I live on a farm and I'm stuck at home right now for the foreseeable future, but it's different for me where I'm on a farm. I got 10 acres. I can do all kinds of stuff here. I can't imagine living in an apartment or a condo and being stuck at home. It'd be real difficult.
Yeah. That's the part of the I understand peaceful protesting, but the violence and the vandalism part, I think, is so short-sighted, because what the protesters may not understand is that so many of the people that are affected by that are people that are probably on their side to some extent, to some part of the argument. And so now when you're tearing up businesses owned by absolutely innocent operators who may even employ people of color, African Americans, Hispanics, whatever, And now those people are out of work. So what do you do now? And typically downtown, especially at the street level, most of those businesses are independently owned businesses. They're not always corporations. So I don't understand the motive there and why that's being done. And there's no doubt that the distillery business, Distillery Row, that we've talked about all the players there, they're definitely being affected by it. I mean, what good is that going to accomplish?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Me and Jim have kind of stayed silent on the whole matter because we always say we don't do religion, we don't do politics, and we don't do social issues. But we both served our nation for a reason. We served it so we could all have the freedom of speech and to rightfully protest as part of freedom of speech. But whenever you start destroying businesses and I know there's a candy shop down on 4th Street that they said they lost several thousands of dollars.
Is that Art Eatables?
Goods. Yep.
That's terrific people that own that. Good-hearted people. A lot of people of color working there. I can tell you that much. And
how are those? If it happens again, are they going to be able to reopen again? That's some of that stuff is it just breaks my heart for businesses like that they're going through this. And we're thinking about you if you're listening to us out there. So we'll try to end this on this first half on a good note. I'll tell you what, I don't know how your bourbon is or your rye you're drinking, the Michter's rye you're drinking is, but if I could get Lisa to make some more of this vaults, man, I would. It's that good.
Yeah, so, this Michter's straight rye is just fantastic.
We're going to go ahead and take a break now. When we come back, I'm going to drink some TX bourbon out of Fort Worth, Texas area, and we'll get to Steve and see what you got going on in the near future, tastings and ham pairings with bourbon. So
got lots of that coming up.
We'll be right back.
I'd like to thank Tommy and Gwen Mitchell from Logheads Home Center for supporting this episode of The Bourbon Road. Logheads Home Center, nestled in the hills of Kentucky, is an industry leader in building handcrafted rustic furniture. Family owned and operated, they take pride in offering only the very best for their customers. The Logheads, and that's what they like to call themselves, are skilled woodcrafters who are passionate about creating rustic furniture for people who appreciate the beauty of natural wood. Owners Tommy and Gwen don't just sell the rustic lifestyle, they live it. And you can be sure that Logheads furniture will always be handcrafted in Kentucky by artisans who embrace the simple way of life. Logheads rustic furniture is made from northern white cedar, a sustainable wood that's naturally rot and termite resistant. Its beauty and quality will add warmth to your earthy lifestyle for generations to come. Be sure to check out everything they have to offer at logheadshomecenter.com. And while you're at it, give Tommy and Gwen a shout on Facebook or Instagram at Logheads Home Center.
All right, listeners, we're back and we're here with Steve Coomes. So for my second half, pour Steve, I'm drinking some TX bourbon out of Firestone and Robertson Distillery, Distilling Company in Texas. It's a 127.4 proof, only 4 years old. But it is, this is some dark juice right here.
No, so tell me about it. So to have it that dark, are they aging these barrels in rick houses that aren't cooled at all? Or are they just getting abused by that Texas heat for 4 years?
Most of them do it that way, that they're not temperature controlled. I know I went to Balcones and we went up inside the second or third and fourth floors of they're in an old fire safe or fireproof warehouse. That's where people would store their like valuables and stuff. It's made out of brick and stuff. And we got up to the 4th floor. It was about 136 degrees up there.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought I was going to pass out up in there. And just if you would have lit a match inside that room, the whole place might have went up.
Because of the alcohol vapors?
Yeah, it was amazing. I was like, and there's guys in there working too. They were tightening up barrels. So if people don't know, if you have a warehouse like that, you're going to have some leakage and you need to tighten barrels up. And that's what those guys were doing. So I felt bad for them. I was like, ooh, I got to get out of here.
Do you like to tell us whether you like the whiskey? How does it compare to 127 proof 4-year-old American? I mean, I shouldn't say American, Kentucky whiskey.
So some people might think this is sacrilege, but I think it blows the doors off a 4-year-old Kentucky bourbon because the age, I almost think, and I've said this several times on the past couple podcasts, Texas bourbon should have its own classification, or Texas whiskey, I guess, because of the maturation there is just so much different than in Kentucky. It is, I would say this is like a 12 to 14-year-old Kentucky bourbon.
Oh my goodness. So does it have the complexity that you get from, just the headspace in the barrel and all the, chemical reactions, or is it just the interaction with the oak and the color that you're getting?
I'm not positive what's going on there, but some of the companies out there has definitely figured it out. TX has definitely figured it out. Balcones, Iron Root, and Garrison Brothers, and there's several others down there. They got a whole Texas whiskey trail. They've tried to model it after the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, and I know they talk to each other very often. So, if you're down in Texas, I'd say hit some of those distilleries. And they got 3 different regions there because Texas is a gigantic state. They've got like the Austin area, they've got the Dallas area, and I think they got
Fort Worth area. They'll correct you on the DFW.
Yeah, DFW area. That's a big old area, right? So
it's huge.
So this is a wheated bourbon right here.
No kidding.
Red Winter wheat. It is just delicious. Now, me and Jim just reviewed their standard bottling of this, which most people have already heard by this episode, and we loved it. We couldn't say enough good stuff about it.
That's cool. I'm glad to hear that.
If a lot of people say, hey, you can't have bourbon that's not outside of Kentucky, and
nonsense.
Yeah, if you read the rules, you follow the rules, and that's why you're making it, then it's bourbon. And there's some damn good bourbon out there. Obviously, a lot of people think that because look at Iron Root, and they won world's best bourbon this year, and they beat out Rebel Yell 10-year, which is like one of my favorite bourbons.
And that was Jim Murray who awarded them that, right?
It was the Whiskey Magazine's World Whiskey Awards.
Oh, it was Whiskey Magazine. Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know a whole bunch about the awards. You probably know a lot more than we do about the awards and how they're awarded and who the judges. Have you ever been a judge at one of those?
I have not been asked to do that. I'm not sure that my palate could take tasting that much and be trustworthy. I don't know how they taste that amount of spirits and really get the job done. I mean, that's just my opinion of it. And some of the judges I know are absolutely upstanding people. So they've been chosen and I haven't. I'll give it a shot if they ever invited me to do it. But I was a chef for a long time in restaurants, and I know about palate fatigue, and it can come on you pretty quickly. So how you would taste something so narrow in flavor profile and aroma profile dozens of times. I think as many as 120 they may go through in a day, and discern between that. I'm not sure, but I bet their system is pretty solid. So,
well, I don't know how they would do it because this is it's 127 proof, so it's definitely got that barrel spice to it. I think
that's cool. Good for them.
It's good. I wouldn't have picked it up if I didn't like it. And I didn't buy this, a liquor store there. Actually, I walked into the liquor store and the guy knew who I was and said, "Hey," I was like, "Man, I've never had this before, and I really want to try it before. I'm thinking about not pulling the trigger." And he was like, "Well, I don't actually own this store," but he was like, "I know who you are." And I was like, "Man, I'm all the way down here in Texas, and this guy knows who I am." So
that's pretty cool.
He was like, "I'll open a bottle for you and I'll let you taste it."
Gosh.
But I tasted it and I was like, I definitely want a bottle of that. I felt pretty glad that happened to me. And I'm just, hey, like me and you were saying yesterday, we were talking, and it's a nice benefit of the job, right? Of reviewing whiskeys and talking about whiskey and being part of that bourbon culture. But I'll tell you that I've paid it forward, and several of my friends have gotten samples of this, and just so I could get them to experience it. One guy that he is one of those naysayers that bourbon can only come from Kentucky, and I put it in a sample bottle, gave it to him, didn't write anything on it. I said, "Hey, I want you to try this." And he texted me back that night and said, "That is amazing. It tastes so good. That's a good bourbon." So I saw him the next time he had to come down to my house, and he's like, "What was that?" And I was like, "It's Texas bourbon, man." He's like, "Oh my God."
Well, and Booker knows saying always was, if you can get them to put it in their mouths, they'll drink it and enjoy it and buy it. And that's really kind of what it's about, tasting. Speaking of tasting, my bottle is this. This is a Knob Creek. It's called Caroline's Pick. It's done by Justin's House of Bourbon, and my buddy Caroline Paulus picked it, and it's 120 proof, 9-year, and it's absolutely delicious. Brown sugar bomb, plenty of baking spices. I think you and I have talked about it. I love private barrel picks. That, to me, those are the real unicorns of the whiskey world, is to get that one-off bottle.
If you can find a pick, if you're out there and you go into a store and you don't know what we're talking about, you just started listening to the podcast. So a store or a chain, they'll send a group out, or even whiskey groups like us or podcasts will go out and they'll send some people into the rick house. They'll sit down, they'll taste 5-6 barrels, and they'll pick that barrel, and then that barrel gets bottled, and that's their pick. If you find one of those picks, or you have a opportunity to buy a pick, buy it and try it, especially if it's from a place like Justin's House of Bourbon, somebody that knows whiskey and they're tasting it every day. That's a great place to go taste some bourbon.
It also is, as far as I know, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, the only place, there are two of them, one's in Louisville, one's in Lexington, where you can legally sell your old spirits to those guys. They can buy it and they'll resell it. I mean, so you could trade legally with those guys at Justin's House of Bourbon. Everybody else is doing it on the secondary market, which isn't legal. But at the same time, if you want to do it conscience free, they may buy what you have.
There is a new store opening up in northern Kentucky, and I don't know the name of it, but I saw the not the ad, but one of our friends said, "Hey," and I think it was maybe it was Marianne Barnes. No, I'm trying to think who posted that, but they are opening a vintage bottle shop up there to where you can buy and sell whiskey like that.
That's fun. I mean, there are whiskey museums, especially if you go into Justin's and you see some of these bottles that are not only haven't been around for 100 years, some were pre-prohibition, so that's much longer. But some of those old Crow chest set bottles, and them having complete sets, and the stories that they can tell about, buying, somebody calling them and said, "Well, I found in my grandfather's basement a case of Old Fitzgerald 1957 bottle of bond. That box has never been opened." And they're like, "Where do you live?" We'll be there, like, Batman and Robin. So that's how they find those things. You talk about a cash intensive business. They got to have it ready to buy, and they got to be able to sell it and get their money back. Their stories are interesting.
Now, Mark and Sherry Carter are actually building their little urban distillery right next to that, right?
Just the bottle shop. I was down there, as a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, and got to talk to them. If you've never met the owners of Old Carter Distillery. They are some of the nicest people in the business. Mark and Sherry Carter's, he said. They made their money in wine making with Carter Vineyards, and they're spectacular wines. Some of their wines have gotten 100 points from Wine Spectator, so that's pretty phenomenal. That's rare air. So they also were the original founding partners of Kentucky Owl. You knew that, right, Mike?
Oh yeah. They're good friends of ours. Me and Jim have had dinner with them, and we have sat down and laughed so hard with them. Now she's an artist. She actually designed the Old Carter label, and she designed the Kentucky Owl label.
Yeah.
And the horse on the Old Carter bottle is actually a wooden carving that she carved herself.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me is an image of one of the horses she rides. She said the other day when I saw her that they have not gone back to California since COVID struck. So they lived in Kentucky for quite a while now. She said, "I miss my horses and my dogs."
Yeah, she's always posting videos. She just posted a video, I don't know, it was last night or today. She was cutting Mark's hair.
But you were saying next door to the Justin's House of Bourbon in Louisville is going to be the Old Carter bottle shop. So you'll be able to go there and get their stuff. They'll show their wines, but I don't believe that they're going to buy a wine and beer package permit, so you won't be able to purchase them. But it will be cool. I'll guarantee it. And behind that is going to be, or next to it or wedged in between, is going to be the Justin's bar. So some cool things are happening despite what's going on with COVID. I mean, that these people with great foresight in our whiskey business on the retail end are really making fun things for us.
Yeah, I think, you rebuild businesses and you put new businesses in there downtown, or just like they did over in Lexington with the distillery district, where
what a great spot that is.
Took the Old Pepper distillery and they put all those shops in there. There's a great pizza place there. There's
Goodfellas.
You can get, I might say this wrong, is it Boone and Crockett?
Crank and Boone.
Crank and
Boone ice cream.
Yeah, man. And they got a bourbon ice cream that's out of this world.
I just gained a half pound uttering those words. God, that's good ice cream.
There's an axe throwing place, which I do not recommend going to the distillery first and then going to the axe throwing place.
Go to Ethereal Bourbon. Ethereal Brewing. It's a fantastic brewery. That's and that's a great way to finish. Like if you go to Woodford Reserve, Castle and Key, what else is around there? Mike, I can think Turkey and Four Roses aren't that far away, and you can finish up in the distillery district. Maybe you can get another bourbon tour at Bluegrass Bourbon. And what is the other distillery there?
Yeah, Bluegrass, and then you got Town Branch there in Lexington, and you could get right down the road to Three Boys. I think it's Three Boys Farm down. That's pretty close to us. But if you could hit all of the big group there, you get Wild Turkey, Buffalo Trace, Woodford Reserve, Castle and Key, Four Roses, and then maybe go over there Bluegrass Distillers, and right next to Bluegrass is actually another brewery, and then go grab some great pizza at Goodfellas. I mean, it's delicious there, man.
And everything overlooks Town Branch Creek, which is what Town Branch Distillery is named after, and was the creek by which Lexington was founded because it was a great water source at its time. So it's kind of a bucolic, dead industrial setting. I mean, it's one way to look at it. That it's one of the great reuses of space that I've seen in Kentucky. It's fantastic. Love Lexington too. Great town.
It is. It's a little bit different than Louisville, Kentucky, but it's still, I love it. It's a great town to visit. Great music there. Great food. Even downtown. If you go to downtown Frankfort, there's a little place called Capitol Cellars. If you're, and some great little restaurants downtown Frankfort, the Kentucky capital there. Delicious. You haven't been to Capitol Cellars?
I have not.
It's just a small bottle shop, and you might find a little gym in there if you ever go inside there. Great owners, great people. Almost any place in Kentucky, I think, is like that, though. You're always going to find somebody great. One of the questions I'm going to ask you, because we talk about maturation and stuff, and I've talked about this with other people. where Wild Turkey's rick house is set up on top of a hill. They're still overlooking the Kentucky River, but they're up way above the Kentucky River. So the temperature there could be a lot higher than if you went down into Glens Creek, where Castle and Key is, and Woodford Reserve, where their rick houses are, or down in a little valley. And the temperature change there is almost 20 or 30 degrees. Do you think that plays a difference in the rick houses and the aging of whiskey?
There's no question. There's no question. In fact, when you talk to the people at Heaven Hill, they have close to, I've lost count, but it's close to 70 rick houses over 5 or 6 campuses. So they've got at the bottling plant one, they have Glencoe, they have Shenley, they have Deatsville, Cox Creek, and then Bernheim. So they have 6 places between Louisville and Bardstown that have different rick houses, different styles, different elevation, different exposure to the elements. And that's why they can pull off having one, they call it HH Reg. It's their one bourbon, rye bourbon, that makes multiple different whiskeys. So if you're a fan of Elijah Craig, Henry McKenna, JTS Brown, Heaven Hill, T.W. Samuels, J.W. Dant, all those are the same whiskey, but because of all of the ways that these rick houses age their whiskeys differently, you get different whiskeys, profoundly different tasting whiskeys.
Oh, yeah.
And those guys, they would love to have some of those high altitude rick houses near the Kentucky River, I'm sure, because they understand what happens. And I've had the good fortune of going into almost all of those campuses and seeing and feeling the differences and understanding what they're talking about. But the newest ones that are being built at Cox's Creek, which in this case is on Bardstown Road, versus Cox's Creek is a long stretch of land that you can get to by Highway 245, which is off I-65, and then you can go to Bardstown Road, which leads from Louisville directly to Bardstown, obviously.
Yeah.
And those are where their largest, newest 56,000 barrel rick houses are being made or built. And the master taster, though he doesn't go by that title, is a guy named Mike Sonny at Heaven Hill. And he said, the samples that we're pulling out of those new rick houses at 3 years were blowing our minds. And I said, well, what's driving that change? And he said, location, no trees, no shade, great circulation, high elevation. And these people even know now to turn these things a certain way to the prevailing winds to get good airflow, not only in the design of the music rick houses, but in just the design of nature. That's the way, so that's kind of a fingers crossed thing, because that's the way that storms approach. So, they've been known to rip some metal roofs off of the Deatsville rick houses.
You definitely can't miss those rick houses on Bardstown Road, though, when you're coming from Louisville.
What a great sight. People say, it's just a warehouse. I get all tingly. I love them.
They're monstrous. I'm sure some distilleries, we went up to Boone County, and they just have a small little warehouse. I would call it, I've got neighbors with shops like that size, or barns that's pole barn size. And they've got it filled up, and they're doing their thing down up there. But then you drive by Heaven Hill, and you're just like, wow, that place is monstrous. And
the Buffalo Traces are even bigger. They're 58,000 barrel. Yeah.
Now, Wilderness Trail, some of our friends over there, Pat and Shane, they bought some land across from their distillery there, and they're coming on. They are going to be putting out some juice. They're shockingly.
Talk about for people who've not been to that distillery or even had their stuff. It just trust both of us. That's flat out amazing whiskey, because they're doing things that nobody else is doing in terms of fermentation. Their company, Wilderness Trail, was built out of money that came from their yeast business called Firm Solutions. And they manage and create more than 500 yeast strains for distilleries all over the world. So they had the capital to do that. And the first time I went there, Mike, that I saw the distillery, I don't know, 5 years ago, it was this little Potemkin distillery. It had a little teeny, everything is like Disneyland miniature compared to all the big distilleries. I was like, this is cute. I come back years later. I was like, oh my gosh, what has happened? Did somebody just dump helicopter money onto this place? Because now it's the gigantic, well, at least large 22,000 barrel rick houses, the much bigger distillery, the much bigger visitor center. And at the helm of it, as you know, are some of the coolest guys in the business, Pat Heist and Shane Baker. And you talk about it, just a great American success story and incredibly unique whiskey.
And you would never know that they say they're whiskey poor, definitely. But you would never know those two guys are super successful. They're just two dudes, wear T-shirts and blue jeans. And
that's on dress up day.
Yeah. They'll sit down and talk whiskey with you any day. We went over there to pick up our bottles of 6 year, which they gave us a little surprise, which were all single barrel. And now if you buy the 6 year off the shelf, it's not single barrel. I just thought it was awesome. Pat came outside and he's go, "Oh, Big Chief, you're here, man. What's up?" And me and him sat outside the front of the distillery there and talked for, I don't know, we were probably out there hour and a half. Where the staff, I think he had some other stuff to do, but we were talking about his new rick houses and why they didn't go above 30,000 barrels in their new rick houses. There was actually a reason, because I think it's over 30,000 barrels. You have to have a sprinkler system.
Over 22.
Is it over 22? And so that's the design.
Who came up with that obscure number? I don't know.
So maybe it's 21,500 barrels they can put in there or something. So they don't have to have a sprinkler system. But he said, I watched a video of one of the fires, and I want to say it was the Jim Beam fire. And he said, now watch, he showed me the video. He said, now watch it. He's like, you'll see the instant where the sprinklers come on, and it was like just a little poof of steam. And he was like, then the fire went on about its business. He's like, them sprinklers don't do nothing. So he was like, it'd be wasting money.
Old rick house though, too, to be fair. I guess.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. And if you don't know where we're talking about, is down there from Castle on Key.
That one, that old one, that was built in 1911.
Yeah.
That brick one, 45,000 barrels.
Yeah. So he said the sprinkler systems probably wouldn't do anything. So I don't know. Heaven Hill might have a different thought process.
Heaven Hill at their rick houses at the Cox's Creek campus they have 300. I want to say it's 330,000 gallons of water at the ready. That if there's a fire, immediately 2 diesel generators turn on, and it's called a dry system. So brick houses traditionally have trouble in the wintertime moving water around because they're not temperature controlled, and the pipes would freeze. So that's one of the reasons why they didn't do it historically, because it was just expensive and you would have frozen pipes. Well, Heaven Hill's solution to it is to have a dry system. So you'll see the sprinklers when you're in the rick houses, but there's no water in the system. If there's a fire, those engines kick on, those generators kick on, and start pushing 330,000 gallons through those rick houses. And now that they've had such success with that campus, they're having to build, I believe, additional horsepower and generators to push more water through. I think they're going to have 12 or 14 houses there when it's done.
Wow.
So what does that add up to? It's a 200,000 barrels. Is my math off? Probably much more than that, almost 400,000 barrels.
Well, you said 50,000 barrels of where?
Okay, we're going to do some knot into knot. So if we're 12 times 56,000. Wow, I was way off. 672,000 barrels.
That's a lot of barrels of whiskey.
I'm a word guy, Mike, not a math guy. So, but that's their one solution. Now, the other way they manage that is Buffalo Trace. Their monster warehouses, the new ones, are heated to at least 40 degrees or whatever Fahrenheit, so that the water would not freeze. And they do like the insulating value of their new rick houses, so because it does control some of the temperature. They can get so low that the whiskey won't interact with the wood anymore. So there's a lot of thought that goes into these places where they just stick barrels for 4, 6, 10 years at a time.
Isn't it amazing how much thought, like you said, goes into building rick house for these distilleries, and they're not stopping. If you go over to Bardstown Bourbon Company right now, and stuff is going on over there, they're putting up warehouses all over the place, which is a good thing. It means money's coming into Kentucky, right?
That's right. Now we got to get some of that money going back over or come back from overseas. We can get past these tariffs that are slowing things down. Brown-Forman is taking $150 million hit every year from reduced sales of Jack Daniels and probably a little bit of Old Forester in there, maybe some Woodford too.
You wouldn't think that tariffs, that is definitely not a lot of money even for that company to lose every year. But you would think it was still, like you had said before, tariffs, and that wouldn't have a whole lot to do with bourbon, but it does, I guess, overall.
It's a pawn. So it's like Mongo in Blazing Saddles, pawn in Game of Life, It's just the sad state of affairs that somebody, overseas thought, let's stick it to these guys, these whiskey makers. And I'm sure they're going, what do we have to do with Airbus? Airbus aircraft and steel, we're not even involved, but pawns in Game of Life.
I guess it is. It's a sad thing too, because, bourbon going around the world right now, some of the biggest countries that are drinking bourbon, Australia and Spain, Japan, South Korea, India, those countries, they're not being able to get the same stuff we're getting. Me and Jim will drink something or we'll do a live show and they're like, where'd you get that bottle at? And we got it right down the street from us.
Yeah, Mike, I got to go to Australia in 2004 and I brought the only kind of kitschy cool thing that I could find to take liquor wise was Woodford Reserve had these really nice bottles in wooden cases. And I thought, if they don't drink it, they can stick it on a shelf and say the nice American brought it to us. Two of the guys there were three basic sponsors for the trip. It was a media trip, and two of the guys said, you keep it. And the third guy, who was an Aussie who spent 13 years in the United States working for Vulcan Ovens, he said, man, bourbon, bring it on. He's like, we can't find any of it here. Anything, I think Jim Beam had a footprint there, but that was about it. And now, 16 years later, bourbon is on fire in Australia. I mean, they love it because they're beer drinkers mostly down there, and some scotch, and they produce fantastic wines. But bourbon just wasn't there, and now it is one of the fastest growing overseas markets for the United States.
So we have a listener there, and he's part of our group, and me and Jim were talking about doing a pick coming up here, and
pick me.
Well, he's like, how do I get that pick to Australia? How do I get it? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure how we get that pick to you, but there's a will, there's a way.
There's a way.
Put it on a boat. We can put it on a boat. It'll get there. I don't think that I guess that would be shipping whiskey if it went on a boat. So yeah,
that's true.
So Steve, what do you got going on here in the near future? Where could people see you at if they wanted? You got any events that are coming up?
Gosh, just like us doing this podcast on on the web, that the StreamYard, thank God we have that technology. That's what my public appearances have been limited to, and I've got right at the time that COVID really took off and saw a lot of things canceled in the United States. I lost, I think, 3 or 4 ham, cheese, whiskey, chocolate, whatever, and whiskey pairings in St. Louis, along with the St. Louis Bourbon Society. And when Michter's was the sponsor of the events, and they just said, we need to be cautious and we're going to pull out. And so that was a shame. And one of the organizers of the St. Louis Bourbon Society is a guy named James Thomas. And he said, the one thing that we learned from that was we didn't make enough tickets available for sale. We could have done much bigger events. And when this crisis backs down, that's what we'll do. But in the meantime, we're going to have a virtual tasting for about 60 people tied to the society late in August. So it'll be online just like this. Mictors will send the whiskey ahead of time. It's going to be divided up into sample bottles among those who purchase the tickets. And I'm going to take 4 different country hams and slice and make individual packets of 60, for everybody, have those numbered, and they'll know what hams they're tasting. And we're going to do it online. I and Andrea Wilson and their master distiller, Dan McKee. So that's as close as we're going to be able to do something broadly public. And then the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. That's the only thing that I'm aware of right now.
So are there still tickets available for that? Or
they have not gone on sale. And what I was told by the society was that they are tied to their Patreon community. So anybody can be a member, as it were, through their Facebook page, but their Patreon community has levels of paid membership, I think $5, $15, $20, something like that a month, that allows them first choice on events like this. And so I don't know how widely available it would be. I believe the society is something like 4,000 members strong, Facebook people who are members, but then the Patreon community is a fraction of that. So, but I don't know how many tickets would be available. If you want to join in, I'm sure they wouldn't mind if they were available.
So if you're in the St. Louis area and you want to, Missouri, I guess Illinois is right there, kind of Western Kentucky, if you want to see that event or do that event, and there's only, you said 60, right?
That's the number right now. And I have never done a whiskey and food pairing that didn't swell in attendance. I have yet to have one that if somebody says it's going to be 60, it's 60. It's usually, it starts off at 60 and goes to 100. And that's a great problem to have until that day you're doing all the prep. But so who knows? It still might be an opportunity. It still might be opening, because I understand the Bourbon Society there has members, like you said, Western Kentucky, Illinois, all around. So,
yeah, that's kind of a tri-state area, the St. Louis area and stuff. And James is a good guy. He's a reservist in the U.S. Coast Guard. James, thanks for your service, man. And they're doing great things out there in St. Louis with that Whiskey Society or Bourbon Society.
It's really grown there. Yeah.
I like to see that across the country. I'm always amazed at all these groups that are out there. And I belong to a lot of groups, and a lot of those groups let us post in their private groups on Facebook. And
and our Bourbon Society here in Louisville has done a great job of doing virtual events. And they're educational, but man, it's just not the same as being there with your buddies, your lady buddies and your dude buddies, sipping whiskey. And if you've never been to a Bourbon Society meeting of any sort, people usually show up with bottles, right, Mike? And you put them down on the table and you hope that they're things that others haven't had, and you get to share and you get to drink their stuff. And it's just a great environment. And you meet so many good people all centered on simple whiskey.
Yeah. I think how many groups are in Louisville? There's, I think, the
Bourbon Women, Bourbon Society, Whiskey Chicks. Who else is
Bourbon Brotherhood?
Bourbon Brotherhood. Gosh, Bruce Corwin's group. Sorry, Bruce. Hope you're not listening. Heard me say that. He's a good dude. So that's just Louisville, and we're probably missing a couple of groups there.
Yeah, there's just Louisville Bourbon Hounds is another group. Just so many great groups. Nashville's got a great thing going on down there. Cincinnati's actually got a group now. Just so many things going on, and I can't wait for everything to open back up. And
me too.
If you're out there, look on Steve's website, see when he's doing something. Go see him in person. You're going to miss out if you don't, because he's always bringing that ham with him.
Cured ham and whiskey people is one of the great culinary combinations that too few know about. And it's fun to see the lights come on when people taste it. Like, I'd never thought this. And so, well, I didn't either until about 5 years ago. And now it's a thing. And I get to go do it.
And if you're like, think you're just a prosciutto person, prosciutto is really just ham. We're just talking about redneck ham, right, Steve?
Yeah, there's a fella, Bob Woods, one of my favorite curers at the Hammery in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And he's a smart dude, so don't mistake his accent for ignorance. But he said, Steve, hey, country ham ain't nothing but hillbilly prosciutto. And his hillbilly prosciutto is absolutely outstanding. It's called the 10 Sciutto, as a matter of fact.
Have you been over to Barn 8 in the eating yet?
I have. I got to go there very early on. I want to say, I don't even know that we were concerned about COVID at that time. So it may have been early February. And what they're doing and want to do is terrific. But boy, to start a restaurant and then shut it down that fast and try to get it up going again, can't imagine.
Now, do you know what kind of hams they sell there in their gift shop?
I don't know that. I didn't know that they sold them because we didn't get to see the gift shop experience. We meaning I and some other media folk and some other VIP guests who are well too moneyed for us. Got to go out and taste things, and we got a different treatment than the normal guests would get. But the gift shop wasn't open, the bar wasn't open. It was just the kitchen part. So.
Well, me and Jim went over there. Our wives were actually, my wife had found it and she was like, I want to go over here and try this place out. So I called.
Oh, cool.
Hey, I'd like to do a video of your bar there or in your bar and talk about Barn 8. And at first they were like, well, you can reach out to this PR person because we're not going to, I don't think we're going to let you do it. I was like, oh man, it's not our game really. Cause I'll just pop in a place and say, I want to do a video right here, right now. And I'll release it to probably 50 different groups on Facebook and then on our Instagram account. And it'll get out to like 500,000 people. So when I got there, I said, hey, this is who we are. And this is our podcast. And this is our Instagram. And this is our Facebook page and our Facebook group. And these are all the groups I go to. And I was like, you guys think about it. We'll eat our meal. So next thing you know, here comes their bourbon steward, comes in and talks to us. Their chef comes in and talks to us. The manager comes in, the owner comes in, and they're like, "Yeah, you can do a video."
Nice.
So I did a video, and I think about 20,000 people reacted to it, which was good for them. It gets people in the door. I think it does, anyways. That's what people tell us that we did videos for. Yeah,
seeing that one of the owners is a Brown.
Yeah, she is. And me and Jim had the carp over there.
I love carp. I
think it was silver carp.
Carp from Western Kentucky.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It is it's so white and flaky. Great fish to eat. And I know people in their mind might think carp and it's not good tasting, but we actually watched somebody cook it last night. Tim Farmer. I don't know if you know who he is.
Tim's awesome. Yeah.
And we want to try to get him on the podcast. But he showed him catching it down at Lake Barkley and then preparing it. And then he canned it and then made a little fish salad out of it.
Tim, for those of you who don't know, was injured in a motorcycle accident and lost the use of one of his arms. And for all you hunters out there, bow hunters specifically, Tim does it one-armed.
Yeah,
and with his teeth, and he's dead on accurate, dude.
Pulls the string back with his mouth, and it's amazing. Me and my wife still watch that show. Maybe
it's cool.
Maybe that's speaking to our age, Steve. But we'll sit down and watch it in the evening time, and I just you can learn some great stuff. But hopefully we can get Steve on, or hopefully we can get Tim on the show, and talk about some of the stuff and talk about his love for bourbon, because I've seen him cooking with bourbon before and drinking it. So I know he's a bourbon fan.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
I had that night out there at Barn 8, I had the bison. And that's been a running joke now in our group, because I tried to get Jim to stop on the side of the road because they own the next farm over, and that's where they keep their bison at. I was like, hey man, I'd had a lot of drinks that night. Before we went, I had a cocktail at Jim's house, and then we did 3 bourbon reviews, sit down and recorded them. And then we went to the restaurant and we had several drinks there, and I was not driving. But I was feeling really good. I said, Jim, just pull this car over right here. I'm gonna go over there and wrestle one of those buffaloes down and ride it.
Oh my gosh. That's a docile animal until it's mad.
So that's what I had that night was bison, and it was delicious.
I like bison. quite a bit. Yeah, that's their farm. The Laura Lee Brown and Steve Wilson. That's I'm trying to think of the name. Hermitage. Hermitage is the property where Barn 8 is, but
beautiful place. They took an old stables and made it into the restaurant. And if you're looking for something different to go to in Louisville or right outside of Louisville, 15-20 minute drive up the road, nice scenic drive, go out there to Barn 8 and check them out. It's very, very nice. So,
and that bar, you walk in there, you see all the whiskey on the bar. It's just like unlike any other bar in that you'll see, like I remember going to Ohio and just seeing clear, brown, a little bit of scotch over here and rum and this little pocket of American whiskey. It is brown, totally brown. It's good stuff. So I haven't gotten to sit at the bar. I need to put that on my agenda.
That's on. Well, maybe we can get over there. We'll meet you guys.
That's right in between us. Well, kind of. We all have to go north to go to Goshen. So, yeah.
We just we don't go north. We just cut across country there, and we end up over there in the back country. So, well, Steve, man, I appreciate you coming on today and sitting down and chatting with us, talking about the Bardstown Bourbon Festival, because everybody's going to be looking at that now that there's no other festivals. I'm glad you told us everything about it. I'm glad to sit down and sip some whiskey with you. It's I had 2 great bottles here. I wish that Lisa could have came on with us. Where can our listeners find you on social media?
So my name is, I'll just spell it as it sounds, Steve Coomes, SteveCoom as in Mark, E as in Edward, S.com. So that's my website. Steve Coomes on Facebook, Steve Coomes on Instagram, and Word Chew. It's an old handle I need to change, but my business is called Words to Chew On since I write quite a bit about food. So it's Word Chew. That's the handle on Twitter. So keep up with me.
So you're on Instagram, Facebook, you got your own website, and that's where your events are, right?
Yeah, I'll be happy to put some events on as soon as they happen. Very little that's going on right now.
Or if somebody wants to hire you to come in and do a tasting,
that's where they can find you. I do tastings for hire. In fact, did one in Georgetown not long ago, and it was it was 2 people. I've done them as big as 150, and to do it for 2, that was interesting, and it was a ball. Lovely couple, but I don't usually get to converse. I usually get to do all the talking, and it was so much fun and kept me on my heels, and I enjoyed it.
So if you want to hire Steve for a tasting, go to his website, reach out to him.
Steve at stevecoombs.com. That's the email.
I'm telling you, he's a phenomenal guy. I got to watch him talk over at Wilderness Trail. While I wasn't part of that tasting, I sat there and watched him, and still a great leader for a tasting. I think it's awesome. Thanks. So once again, Steve, thanks. You can find us on social media at the Bourbon Road on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We actually have a private Facebook group called the Bourbon Roadies. We're right about at 715 people right now. We have
surely I'm a member of that, Michael. Am I not?
I don't think you are, but you need to be.
Hey, I'm gonna sign it up right now.
So we'll have Steve in there as a member, and we have master distillers, people in the industry. If you ask a question in there, they'll answer it. Lisa's always in there. Pat Heist is always in there. We have all kinds of people in there in that bourbon group that are just, it's part of the bourbon culture. It's a family. There's only 3 questions you have to ask. Are you 21? Do you drink bourbon? And do you agree to play nice? So we might actually put some extra questions in there that you have to agree to. But hey, we don't do politics. So we don't do religion in there, and we don't argue. Everybody's a family, and you might find that people they absolutely love to share their whiskey and their bourbon road. So come in there and join us. The other thing is, if you enjoy listening to our podcast, if you could please leave us a review on your podcast app that you use. If you're using Apple Podcast or if you're using Spotify, wherever you listen to us at, leave us a review. It helps us open doors. If you also want to find the Glencairns we drink out of that say the Bourbon Road on them, they're on our website. We get those from Distillery Products, and you can also get your Glencairns from there too, from Premium Bar Products, and put your name on there, your bar's name, whatever you have. It's great. You can find me at One Big Chief on Instagram, and you can find Jim at JShannon63. And once again, Steve, man, we appreciate it coming on today. Always love chatting with you.
Always love hanging with you, man.
Yeah. And we'll see you on down the Bourbon Road.
We do appreciate all of our listeners, and we'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to hang out with us here on the Bourbon Road. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and if so, we would appreciate if you'd subscribe and rate us a 5-star with a review on iTunes. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Bourbon Road. That way you'll be kept in the loop on all the Bourbon Road happenings. You can also visit our website at thebourbonroad.com to read our blog, listen to the show, or reach out to us directly. We always welcome comments or suggestions, and if you have an idea for a particular guest or topic, be sure to let us know. And again, thanks for hanging out with us.